Now I ain't one to question the natural order of things. Cattle roam, wind howls, and the sun don't rise a minute late. But even a trail-worn feller like me could tell something wasn't right out on Boone Hollow Ranch. Every sunrise, just past the rooster's first crow, my herd, 22 Herefords, most with white faces like soap bubbles, would shuffle to the same patch of earth and stand there staring. Not wandering, not grazing, just staring. Always due north, just past the dry gulch and the edge of the cottonwood grove, where the land sloped up gentle and the mist hung like ghosts too tired to leave. Now I'd seen cows get spooked before, heard tales of 'em refusing to cross certain streams or balking at shadows, but this was different, like they were waiting on something. Or listening. Or maybe remembering. I didn't pay it no mind at first. Figured maybe they liked the sun coming up that direction. But it wasn't the sun they were watching. And they didn't look peaceful neither. They looked mournful. I first noticed it after the thaw of '89, when the wind still bit hard and the ground smelled of rot and memory. The cattle would rise just before dawn, drift like phantoms from their stalls, and position themselves in a tight cluster, shoulder to shoulder, all eyes fixin' on that same exact patch beyond the rise. Didn't matter the weather, rain, wind, even when snow stacked up like whipped cream on a pie. They'd stand like statues, fasten that same spot with eyes so still, you'd swear they were praying. Now I ain't the superstitious sort, not since I left my mama's Bible buried back in Missouri. But after 3 weeks of this, I started feeling the itch of unease. One morning, with the sky still purple and the stars blinking out, I crept out early, boots crunching frost and heart thumping like a war drum. I followed them, kept low, watched from behind the fence post. That's when I saw it. All 22 of 'em, lined up like soldiers at muster, their breath fogged in the air. Every eye locked on that one spot, just past the rise where the cottonwoods split like old hands. And something was there. Didn't see it straight away, not a shape, not a person, but the hairs on my arms rose like a judge had just called my name. There was a stillness, the kind the prairie gets before a twister drops from a blue sky. And I swear to you, friend, I heard a sound. Low, hollow, like breath being drawn through a busted flute. Didn't come from the cows. Didn't come from me. It came from the rise. I gripped the fence so tight my knuckles turned bone white. Thought about running back to the house, slamming the door, and pretending none of it happened. But you don't live long in cattle country if you spook easy. So I waited, and the sound came again, this time closer. But just as I braced myself, heart hammering, breath stuck somewhere between my boots and my belly, the sun crept up over the edge of the cottonwoods, and just like that, the cows broke formation. They blinked, turned, and began grazing like normal, like nothing ever happened. But I saw it, just before the light hit the rise. A shimmer. Not a man, not a beast, but something wrong. Like the air there weren't set in, right with the rest of the world. And I knew, right then and there, I had to go up there myself. Had to see what had cow spellbound. Next part. I'll tell you what I found when I finally got the nerve to climb that rise. Next morning, I didn't wait for the cattle to line up. I left before first light, bundled in my old buffalo coat, rifle slung across my back, boots laced tight as Sunday truth. The rise weren't but a quarter-mile from the barn, but that walk felt longer than any trail I'd ridden since the war. The earth was still crusted in frost, crunching beneath my heels like bones under snow. The cottonwoods stood black and still, their limbs twisting, like crooked arms reaching for help that never came. And the closer I got to the spot where those cows always stared, the heavier my boots seemed to fall, like the ground didn't want me stepping on it. Now I ain't one to rattle easy. I've faced down stampedes, rustlers, and one ornery bronco that near broke my collarbone. But what I felt on that rise, it was different. Cold seeped through my coat, though there was no wind. The air hung thick, like breath in a closed room. And then I saw it. Not much at first, a slight depression in the earth, half hidden under a tangle of dead grass and scrub. At the center was a stone, flat and gray, no bigger than a saddlebag lid. But it weren't natural. No, sir. That stone had been placed. It had edges worn smooth, like it had been touched by many hands. And there were marks on it, Carvings, maybe. Symbols I couldn't make sense of. I knelt beside it, brushed off the frost with my glove. Some kind of spiral. Circles within circles. And around it hoof prints. Not fresh. Not old neither. Too small for cattle. Too large for deer. Something had stood here. Something that didn't want to be followed. I felt eyes then. Not like the stares of curious folks, nor even the glare of a mountain lion stalking you from the brush. No, this was worse. This felt ancient, like the land itself was watching. Judgin', I stood quick, heart hammering, like a woodpecker in a whiskey barrel. I backed away slow, eyes never leaving that stone. That's when I heard the whisper. Not from behind me, not from around me, from beneath me. Just one word, low and dry. Boone. My name. That was enough. I turned, near tripping on a root, and didn't stop running till I hit the edge of the corral. The cattle were standing there, right on time, staring at the rise. Same as always. But this time I understood. They weren't watching. They were warning. Later that day, I went into town, bought whiskey, though I'd given it up years before. Sat at the saloon till the bottle was half empty and my nerves half steady. And that's where I ran into old Sheriff Del Harlan. He took one look at me, pale as a church ghost, and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Didn't have to, 'cause the look in his eyes told me he knew that rise too. Knew it well. Sheriff Del Harlan was the kind of man whose silence carried more weight than most men's sermons. Broad across the shoulders, boots worn down to the nail, and a face like a map of old regrets. He'd seen more than most and spoken less about it. That day, sitting across from me in the dim saloon light, he set down his tin cup, leaned forward, and said, "Boone, that rise ain't just a hill." I waited. "You know why your cattle look at it?" he asked, voice low and slow. "'Cause they remember. Creatures like that, they ain't got words, but they carry old memory. Real old. He told me it started long before any of us had laid fence on that land, long before cabins, before trails, even before the tribes that called this valley home. They used to call it Sanakila, he said, in the tongue of the Shoshone. Roughly means the place where the sky breathes backwards. I never did rightly understand it till I saw it. Turns out, Sheriff Harlan had been up on that rise too. Back in '61, before the badge, before the whiskey lined his belly, he'd been part of a survey team, one of them fellas sent out to map the land for the Union Pacific. He and two others set camp just east of the grove, right on that slope. Said he woke one night to the sound of the cattle screaming. Not mooing, not groaning, screaming. By the time he got out of his tent, the stars were gone. Not clouded, gone. Like a blanket had been thrown over the sky. His fire wouldn't light. His compass spun like a drunk on payday. And his two partners? One was gone without a trace. The other, well, they found him a day later, sitting cross-legged on that stone, whispering a name that didn't sound like any language Del had ever heard. He never came back from it. Mine cracked clean open. Sheriff Harlan lit a match with trembling fingers and stared at the flame, like it might keep the story from getting loose. "Boone," he said, "you ever see a man whose eyes looked older than his face?" I nodded slow. I think I did. This morning. In my own reflection. The sheriff snuffed out the match. "Then you best listen now. That rise don't belong to us. It ain't ours to cross, to till, or to know. And the folks who forget that, they don't stay folks for long." I tried to laugh. "So what, we just let it be?" He nodded. "That's exactly what you do. You let it be. And if your cows want to stand there and watch it every day for the rest of their lives, you let 'em." He stood, heavy with something more than age, laid a hand on my shoulder and leaned close. "And whatever you do," he whispered, "don't go back up there after dark." Then he was gone, just like that, out into the sun that now looked a little too pale for comfort. I tried sleeping that night. I truly did. But rest wouldn't come, not with that rise so near and Sheriff Harlan's words still clinging to me like the smell of burnt grease. The wind whispered through the chinks in my cabin walls like it was trying to speak, a language older than thunder. And then the cows started bawling. Not all at once, not like a panic, but low and mournful, like a hymn sung under breath. I rose barefoot, grabbed my coat and lantern, and stepped out into the dark. The stars were out, but not where they should be. I don't know how to explain it. They twinkled wrong, just a hair off, like a picture frame that ain't quite level and won't settle no matter how much you nudge it. The cows were all standing again. Same line, same direction, only now they weren't alone. There was a shape on the rise. Not tall, not wide, but wrong. I couldn't see it fully, just a silhouette against the sky. But it pulsed, somehow. Not like breathing. More like shifting. Like the world didn't know how to wrap itself around it. And Lord help me. I took a step forward. Just one. The ground hummed beneath my feet, faint but steady. A vibration in the soles of my boots, like there was a current deep under the soil. The lantern flickered, hissed, then died. That's when I heard it again. Not my name this time. A sound like stone on stone, like teeth grinding in a jaw too large to belong to man or beast. It came from the rise, and from the ground beneath me. I stumbled back, heart beating like a drum in a raid, and turned toward the barn. But that's when I saw her. Old Miss Greta, my lead cow, calm as church glass since the day she calved her first, was walking. Slow, steady, toward the rise. I shouted. She didn't stop. I lit a fresh match, nearly burned my thumb, and waved it wildly. But she just kept on walking. None of the others followed. Just her. She climbed that rise like she'd done it 100 times before, even though I knew she hadn't. And at the top, she stopped, faced that stone, and then she knelt. Cows don't kneel. Not like that. Her front legs folded gentle under her, and she just lay down, looking right at that cursed stone. I called again, desperate this time. No answer. Then, just as I stepped toward her, a breeze passed by, cold as grave dust. She stood, walked back down, like nothing ever happened. Didn't look at me, didn't moo, just walked back to the herd. But I swear to you, she was different. Her eyes looked older, like she'd seen something. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know what. After that night, Greta didn't act the same. She ate less, wandered more, stood apart from the herd, and when I looked her in the eyes, I didn't see no cow. I saw understanding. And Lord help me, that scared me worse than anything. Now, I ain't no rancher who coddles his herd. I know cows are simple beasts, meant for grazing, not philosophizing. But Greta, she watched me now, followed me with her eyes, like she was waiting on me to do something. By the third day, I knew I had to go back to that rise. Couldn't shake it no more. But I wouldn't go unarmed. I packed my rifle, took 3 rounds, tied a flask of coffee to my belt, and carried a length of rope. Don't ask me why. I just knew rope felt right. Maybe it was the old instinct in me, the part that remembered when knots could save your life. This time, I went by daylight. The sky was clear, wind stiff and dry. The rise looked the same, but the air? Still off. Thicker, like breathing through wool. I stepped up, one boot at a time, till I reached the stone again. That spiral was still there, clearer now, like the frost had worn away whatever had been hiding it. But around the stone were holes. 3 of them, small, precise, like post holes, but shallow, and all pointed inward, toward the stone. I knelt beside one, reached in with my gloved hand. Felt nothing at first, just dry dirt and pebbles. Then air, a hollow, and beneath it wood, old, smooth, like a beam. I froze. Buried under that hill was something made. I ran back to the barn, fetched a spade, and returned before sunset. Dug slow, careful. Took an hour to clear enough for a proper look. What I found weren't natural. A trapdoor, oak planks, gray with age, bound by iron straps rusted near through. No handle, no hinges, just a seam. And in the center, carved into the wood, the same spiral. Only this one was fresh. I traced it with my fingers, and the wind changed. Not hard, not cold, but full of sound. Not voices, not words, but memories. I heard my pa's voice, though he'd been dead 12 years. Heard the scream of a horse I lost in a flood. Heard the sound of a girl Logan, one I hadn't thought about since I was 16 and stupid. It was all there. Like the air itself was remembering me. I backed away, near dropped my spade. Something lived under that rise. Not a person, not an animal. A place. Alive in its own way. And whatever it was, it knew my name. Now I ain't no fool. I know when the earth gives up something, it's kept hid. A man best think twice for digging deeper. But I couldn't stop. The next morning, I went back with crowbar and lantern in tow. Greta watched me go, her eyes full of quiet warning. The rest of the herd didn't even raise their heads. The wind was calm, the sky too clear, like the land itself was holding its breath. When I reached the rise, I knelt before the trapdoor and wedged the bar in the seam. The wood groaned like it hadn't been moved in a century. Rust crumbled as I pried it open, inch by inch. Then it gave. And there it was, blackness deeper than midnight. I lit the lantern, lowered it down first. The light revealed a shaft stone-lined, about 6 feet wide, with a ladder made of knotted rope and timbered pegs. It disappeared into the dark like a throat opening, wide to swallow me. I hesitated. Then I heard it. Not from below. From behind. The cows were standing again. All of them. Lined up, watching the rise. Watching me. Greta stood at the front, still as the day she calved. Her eyes locked to mine, like she was saying go. So I did. I climbed down. Each rung creaked. The air turned damp. Cold. The smell of mildew and iron filled my nose. The walls were stone, carved by hand. The spiral symbol scratched here and there like old folk had needed reminding where they were. Then my boots hit ground. I stood in a chamber, no bigger than a root cellar. Empty, save for a pedestal in the middle. Stone, waist high, and on it lay a single bone. Long, clean, human. I knelt beside it, stomach tenin to churned milk. There was no sign of rot, no sign of decay. Just a single femur, resting gentle like it had been placed, not dropped. At the far wall was another carving. Not a spiral. This was words. Not English. Not Spanish. Something older. But beneath it, one part stood out. It was scratched in shaky script. B. Boone, 1812. I saw it. I saw it. My breath hitched. Boone. My great-grandfather's name was Bartholomew Boone. Died in a hunting accident, they said. Never found his body. I stumbled back. And the wind shifted again. Only this time, it came from within the chamber. Like breath. Like whatever had waited for Bartholomew had waited for me. I turned, scrambled back up the ladder, out into the light. The sun had dipped lower. The cows were gone. All but Greta. She stood alone. And as I caught my breath, she turned slowly and walked away. But not back to the barn. She walked toward the horizon, toward the north, the direction they'd all been fastened this whole time. I followed her. Couldn't say why. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was because part of me knew that if I let her vanish into that horizon, I'd never sleep sound again. She walked steady, never looking back. Her hooves pressed in soft prints into the dry grass. The rest of the herd was gone, scattered like dust in the wind. But Greta? She moved like she was heading home. The land north of the rise turned wild fast. Fence lines grew crooked. Old cattle trails disappeared under brambles. Even the trees looked older. Gnarled limbs like twisted hands, bark pale as bone. The sun was set in low behind me, casting long shadows that moved like they had thoughts of their own. Then she stopped, right at the edge of the old orchard. That place hadn't borne fruit since I was a boy. My pa once told me it was cursed, that the trees grew fine but the fruit came black, split open, full of ash and rot. I never believed him, till I saw it for myself one fall. Now Greta stood there, staring into the orchard, breath steaming like smoke. I stepped up beside her, rifle slung and hand on the stock. That's when I saw the stones, half buried in weeds and moss. 12 of them, arranged in a circle, each one carved with the same spiral, same as the rise, same as that trapdoor. The circle was wide, big enough to hold a small house. And in the center, a stump, not a tree stump, A stone stump, squared off, like an altar, and sitting on top, weather-worn but still standing, was a skull. Not human, not cow, something in between. It had horns, sure, but short, curling like a ram's, but thicker, and the face too long, too narrow, with eye sockets that went back deeper than they had any right to. Greta let out a low, long moo, sad and tired, and then she knelt again, right at the edge of the stone circle. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. Then behind me a sound, not steps, not breath, a rustle, like dry cloth dragging over gravel. I turned quick. Nothing there. But the orchard had gone quiet. Even the wind held its tongue. I turned back, and the skull was gone. So was Greta. I rushed into the circle. No hoof prints. No blood. No sound. She'd vanished like smoke in the sun. But her warmth lingered. I dropped to my knees, pressed my hand to the ground, and the earth beat. Like a heart. Slow. Deep. Waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't eat neither. Just sat on the porch with my rifle across my knees, watching the moon hang low like an old wound in the sky. My thoughts were wild, scattered, kept circling back to that stone circle, to Greta disappearing without a sound, and to the skull that watched me without eyes. Come morning, I packed supplies and returned to the rise. The trapdoor was still open, still breathing. This time, I brought rope and torch, climbed down into that stone throat again, and ran my hand along the walls, searching for answers or signs. What I found weren't either. It was a second tunnel. Narrow, barely wide enough to crawl through. The spiral mark was carved above it, deep and sharp, like it had been made with purpose. And scrawled beside it, fresh this time, were 3 words. Don't wake it. I stared at those words for a long while. Then, against better judgment, and every good sense my mama ever taught me, I crawled in. The tunnel sloped downward. Dirt turned to stone. Air grew thick, sweet like overripe fruit left in a cellar too long. I pressed forward, torchlight flickering, on walls slick with moisture and time. And then it opened up. A chamber, wider than the barn, taller than the silo, carved from the bedrock, circular, like the orchard stones above. But here, they were pillars, 12 of them, ringing the room like sentries. In the center was another pedestal. This one held a stone, flat, about the size of a man's chest. But it wasn't just a rock. It was alive, not breathing, not moving, but humming, softly, like a lullaby hummed by a mother you don't remember. I stepped closer, saw carvings, shapes, no scenes. Animals gathered around it. Men kneel in, spirals, then fire, screaming. The stone cracked. A shadow rose, and then a face. Mine, etched right into the edge. Eyes wide, mouth open, screaming. I stumbled back, dropped the torch. It rolled, flames dancing mad across the stone floor. And the chamber shook. A low rumble like thunder in a coffin. Dust fell. Rocks shifted. And that's when I heard it. From the far side of the room, beyond the pillars. A voice. No words. Just a tone. Like someone, or something, had begun to wake. I didn't wait. Didn't look back. Crawled, climbed, scrambled back up the tunnel, through the shaft, out into the daylight gasping, like I'd been held under a river too long. The trapdoor slammed shut behind me without a touch, and the wind whispered one word in my ear. Soon. The land changed after that. Trees leaned wrong. Shadows lingered longer than they should. Birds stopped singing. Even the dogs in town barked at nothing, till they went hoarse. Folks didn't notice outright, but they felt it. Something just under their boots, waiting. I didn't tell nobody. Who'd believe a rancher who claimed his cow vanished into stone, and he'd seen his own face etched in a chamber buried beneath a cursed hill? But then I got the letter, folded neat in brown paper, tucked into my coat pocket like it had been there all along. No stamp, no ink, just a charcoal mark on the outside, the spiral. Inside, just a list. Names. I recognized most of them. Old-timers. Drifters. One was my Uncle Josiah. Disappeared in '74 without so much as a note. Said he'd gone west. But there he was. Listed. And at the bottom, one name I'd never heard before. Calder. Underlined. Twice. The name crawled under my skin like a tick. I packed my bag. Took the rifle. Headed north again. Didn't stop at the orchard this time. I went beyond it, where the land rose in small steps like something had pushed up from below, and the dirt never settled right again. The sky was gray, but it weren't clouds. Just dull. Like the world forgot how to shine. I found the trail by accident. Worn into the earth, but not by boots or wheels. It was too narrow. Too perfect. It led between two tall rocks marked with carvings, like sentries watching. And beyond, a clearing, with a cabin. Small. Rough. New. Smoke curled from the chimney, but not like wood burning. Smelled like sage. And salt. I stepped up, hand on the rifle stock, and knocked. The door opened, and there stood a man. Tall. Broad. Silent. He had Greta's eyes. Not literally, but the same look. Old. Tired. Watchful. "You Boone?" he asked. His voice was gravel soaked in whiskey. I nodded. He stepped aside. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. "I saw something." He nodded. "Then you're part of it now." I asked him who he was. He looked out the window toward the rise, then back at me. "Name's Calder," he said. "Been waiting on you." Calder poured 2 mugs of black coffee that tasted more like memory than drink. We sat across a rough-hewn table, the only light a single oil lamp that flickered like it knew more than it should. "I was like you," he said. "Had land. Herd. Peace. Till the cows started staring." I nodded slow. "They always know first," he said. "Beasts got a sense for time that ain't measured in clocks. Something in their blood remembers what we forget." He reached behind him and pulled out a book, leather-bound, edges worn. Inside were sketches, spirals, stones, faces. Mine. Not just me. Others. Faces stretched across decades, maybe centuries, each one with the same haunted eyes. "We're not the first," Calder said. "Not even close. That thing beneath the rise, it feeds. Not on flesh. On memory. On witnessing. You look at it too long, and it sees you back. Then it wants you." My throat was dry. "Why us?" He smiled bitter. "Because we saw it and walked away." I opened the last page of the book. There was an entry in familiar script. "Bartholomew Boone, 1812. Found the circle. Entered willingly. Never returned." Next to it, in fresh ink, "Boone descended. Breached the chamber. Heard the voice. Entry inevitable." I looked at Calder. "What happens now?" He stared into his cup. "You go back." I stood. "Why?" "Because it's already coming for you. You either walk in or you're pulled." Outside, the wind picked up, but it weren't blowing through the trees. It was coming up from the rise. I stepped outside. The night sky was gone, replaced by something like a bruise stretched across heaven. The cattle, what few were left, stood on the ridge, faces lifted. Greta was among them again, and the trapdoor was open, glowing. Spirals pulsed with light like veins in the earth skin. I turned to Calder. He didn't follow. He just raised his hand and whispered, "Thank you." I walked back to the rise. No fear left. No anger. Just understanding. At the threshold, I looked once more at the cattle. They weren't watching me. They were mourning. Then I stepped through, down into the chamber, and into the breathing dark. Epilogue. They say Boone Hollow's gone quiet these days. No cattle. No wind. Just an empty rise where nothing grows. But sometimes, at dawn, you'll find a line of cows. Fasten north. Still. Silent. And if you stand there long enough, you might feel it too. The pull. The hum. The memory of what waits beneath.